Welcome to Chat TPT, a podcast about music business from the unique perspective of content creators in the trumpet community. We are so excited to have you here with us today as we dive into the world of trumpet playing, content creation, and everything in between. We hope that you'll find a supportive and inclusive space with us where musicians from all backgrounds can learn, collaborate, and support one another.
I was thinking it would be cool to do an episode on maybe ADHD and how to balance that with also being a musician and practicing and stuff, since we both are squirrels.
Hyperactive squirrels. I would love to talk about ADHD and music because a lot of that is not necessarily as widely understood and catered to as it can be, especially for those individuals who are majoring in music and building their career from that side of things. I think it's very helpful to talk about that. Do you want to do that? We can do that.
I'm down.
Yeah. I think that'll be fun and a good thing to do. And probably the best way to start about it is to just kind of maybe divulge a little bit of details on how you and I approach our careers. I know for sure. Well, so first of all, I've kept track of the students I've taught private lessons to since I started when I was 19 years old. I've taught a lot of students. It's been really great. On one hand, it's really great to have taught a whole bunch of students. On the other hand, it means there's a lot of turnover in the very beginning, right? So there's a flip side, a type of thing, but I got to meet a whole bunch of students in different backgrounds and different opportunities, et cetera. And one of the things that I realized very quickly was just how more pervasive the effects of ADHD and of other neurodivergent forms of experience has been within the coming generations, my generation and the generation under me, millennials, zillennials, Gen Z, etc. Right? All of us who are in that sort of field from the 90s to the 2020s and everything that encompasses that, and the teaching style in most cases in many places have kind of just they've continued to cater to more of a neurotypical style. A lot of the ways that I practice nowadays is I literally sit down and I do my warm-ups, and not even those are the same every day. But I sit down and I go, all right, these are the fundamentals I need to work on. And then I pick something to help me work on them. And it could be out of the Clark book, out of the Arbenz book, the two standards that we pretty much get, we're required to get at any college ever, right, when you start. And they're very useful, and it's absolutely in a great use of your money to do so. However, sometimes I'll take a look at this and I'll be like, oh, that reminds me of this or that. It reminds me of this movie score. It reminds me of this video game melody. It reminds me of whatever it is. And then instead of doing, Clark 3, I will do the melody that it reminds me of from a movie score soundtrack, and I'm still focusing on, in that case, I'm focusing on flexibility, right? As I go through the process of playing the instrument. And then I'll put that down, and then I'll pick up okay, so what am I learning for repertoire? Maybe I'm preparing for a faculty recital, in which case I have plans and I'm going in and spending a specific amount of time learning specific pieces. But even when I go there, I go, okay, great. This is not where I wanted to be. Why is it not where I wanted to be? Well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. They're usually fundamental based, or it's just that I didn't spend enough time to plan out the certain, aspects I need to practice. So it's all right, I need to do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. I don't put any times in them. I don't put any dates or days on them. I get up so in the morning, I'll get up and be like, okay, I really want to work on this section of this piece. Okay, great. I'm happy. Now this section of that piece. Okay, great. I'm happy with this section of this piece, right? And because I know all the tasks that need to be done, I will eventually get to all of them, but I'm not sitting down saying this has to be at a certain point at this certain time or else I'm behind. It's just not something I do anymore. I also go through the process of, so if I'm not, for example, if I'm not preparing for a recital or doing anything of the sort, and you and I talked about how little I play classical music nowadays, which is actually the pendulum swing is starting to come back. I'm starting to pick up some of the pieces that I used to play or some of the pieces I never had the opportunity to play. But if I'm, for example, playing music that I am putting into a TikTok video or an Instagram reel or a YouTube video, then I will approach those in a very similar way that I approach the music that I practice classically, in which I go, oh, okay, cool. This isn't up to par with what I want it to be. So my goal will be to make this happen, and I'll record it whenever. Whenever I get up in the morning and feel like it is when I do it. As opposed to getting up and saying, all right, I have to. Now, a little bit of this, like, when I was in college, there was a lot of, especially as an undergraduate student, which I talked about how I was really lucky. I've had teachers who have been very great at validating my struggles and helping me to work through them and things like that. I was really lucky to have really great understanding teachers. But I put a lot of pressure on myself to feel like I had to be progressing at a certain pace, or else I was behind, or else I was failing, or else I should be ashamed of myself as a musician. And those things have all just gone away. I've gotten okay with myself as a neurodivergent, ADHD-driven worker, and have just said, all right, cool. When I want to do certain things, when I have inspiration to do certain things, I will do those things. And if I don't have inspiration to do them, I don't have to do them. I don't have to feel guilty about not doing them. And what I've noticed is that at some point, as I release that guilt behind not doing something at a specific time, I become a lot more motivated to do it whenever I do feel like it. But if I feel guilty about it, I'm never going to be motivated to do it. So that's really the big thing that has helped me. And I mentioned the students I've taught. I have taken that to many of my students as well. A lot of my students they'll come to me and they'll say, I have to do this for band, or my mom told me I need to practice this, or my dad told me I need to learn my skills. They're forcing me to do all district band. They have me do whatever it is, and halfway through the lesson, we might talk about Star Wars, and the kid's like, wow, I really want to learn Cantina Band Swing. And I'll say, awesome, let's do that next lesson. And they look at me like, what? Are you serious? Like my parents want me to do a district band. No, listen, we can do that. They want you to progress and succeed. So you work on your district band stuff during the week, and we'll spend our lesson learning Star Wars. They get super excited. Like, I didn't know that was possible. Yes, of course it's possible. Let's do this. This is what you're motivated on. You can use your motivation to help you to progress. So anyway, that's kind of how I go through my career nowadays, and it's really kind of helped me and helped those who I work with to progress in a way that is necessary for accomplishing their goals.
I love that. That was fantastic. I have like a very weird relationship with ADHD because I was only diagnosed like less than a year ago. And I spent like most of my life like growing up, I just felt like I was always playing catch up. So it's like, we'd be studying for things in school, and I would have to study like 10 times harder than everyone else to be able to like learn the information and process the information. And I always got good grades in school, but that's because like I would get home from school, I would write notes all day in school. That's the only way I could pay attention, first of all, is if I wrote down every single thing the teacher said, because otherwise I'd just be blip. So I would get home from school, I would rewrite my notes. On the weekend, I would organize my notes into like more organized notes, and that's how I would study. And that would take hours and hours. And nobody else was doing that. I know people who like never studied at all, never took notes, they just remembered things. And I was just like, what's wrong with me, So
imagine just being able to remember something the first time and not forget it.
Well, I can do that only with useless information.
Exactly.
But so it's been really interesting. Like, I feel like the diagnosis was like, it was such a relief because I think the thing that I said to the psychiatrist, she was like, well, why do you want to like do these tests and, figure this out now? And I was like, if I have ADHD, then I know I'm not stupid. I'm just different, like, because every time like I would be, doing something, it would take me so much longer to do it, or like processing information, or even someone would give me directions and I would not be able to remember them. So, I mean, we talked about some of my frustration with directions and getting lost the other time, just like resulting in tears. But it was just sort of like a huge weight off of my shoulders, and I just have had to find different ways to approach how I learn and accept that I learn differently and that I function differently than some other people. And it's not like there's nothing's two-sided, right? There's like multiple sides to everything. Everyone's going to function differently, everyone's going to learn differently, and I love incorporating that into my teaching as well, because every single person is going to react differently to instruction, and you're going to have to figure out different ways to teach them. So yeah, that's sort of like my my thing. The other thing that happened with my ADHD, I realized that I'm terrible at counting rests and reading music. Like really bad. And no matter how hard I focused on reading music and not missing notes, like I just could not do it. And then my psychiatrist and I, we like changed up the medication that I was on, and I didn't realize it until like a few months later when I went back, and she was like, "Oh, like, are you noticing a difference?" And I was like, "I don't know, like not really." And then I was like, "Wait, I just played 3 concerts and I didn't make any reading mistakes." And I was like, "What?" I was like, yes, it's working. So it was just, yeah, it's just been lots of up and down, and like just learning about myself in general and figuring out how to be the most efficient person that I can be, even if it doesn't work for other people. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. That's wonderful. It's really funny that you mentioned what you did about playing music in general, because I have never been able to like, if there's more than 2 rests, it's not happening. And so what actually ended up helping to pave my career as a composer was that I would literally I would listen to every instrument and what every instrument was doing all at the same time. And the way that I knew I was going to come in the right place was by what was happening in the other instruments. And so I got accidentally really good at understanding how all of the parts work in a band specifically, because I spent most of my time playing in with bands. And and that's how I became, the person I am today as a composer, to be able to understand how to write for those instruments for the most part. Now, obviously, some of it came in the more traditional ways of writing music, putting it in front of people, having them play it, learning through that process. But most of it came from me just being unable to sit in band and pay attention to the music in front of me. It just wouldn't happen. And I would go to instances. I also became really good at transposing because I would get really bored, after literally like a minute and a half into rehearsal. And then I would take my trumpet and I would take the tuning slide. I don't recommend this, by the way. I would take my tuning slide and put it all the way out to the point where I had a trumpet in A. And I was like, okay, cool. My challenge now is to transpose everything up a half step and to make it sound in tune and to, make sure that nobody notices that I pulled it out. And I would do things like that, just to stop myself from, thinking about a million things all at the same time and not being able to really focus on what I needed to focus on. I would do those things to keep myself interested. And then when I got bored with transposing, I'd put it back in. I'd be like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to play the same passage as written, whatever, whatever it was. And then I would work on, transcribing other people's parts. Like, well, how do I pick up what the saxophones are playing? All of these things I would do just so that I wouldn't, lose focus on what was in front of me. And it became especially hard. I mean, obviously, sometimes in rehearsal, you have to be meticulous and work with specific sections. And if you happen to not be one of those sections that you're working with, you might be sitting for a little bit of time, especially if you're in an orchestra, because you're more likely to, as a trumpet player, to have more rests in orchestra than in band, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. And if letter B, C, D, E, and F, you're not playing at all, and you get to G and they cut off, and like, all right, let's go back to C. It can be very easy to tune out, and listen, I know this is a first world problem. I know, like, percussionists, y'all have it worse. I understand. I feel for you. Tuba players, etc. Right? We do not have it the worst as trumpet players. But generally speaking, thinking about that type of thing, it can be really difficult to stay focused. And so I had a lot of like random tricks that just came from my brain in rehearsal just to keep myself focused on what was in front of me. So anyway, I just thought it was really funny that you mentioned the way that you did, because I can't remember a single time that I have counted rests and been successful. It has always been through something else. And of course, if I wrote in the horns play at such and such and blah, 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 and they come in to measure late, then I'm going to come in to measure late. But I'd rather do that because I'm guaranteed to come in late or come in early or not come in at all if I'm sitting and counting through 8 bars of rest. And you would think, like, counting to 8, is that really difficult? Yes. For someone like me sitting in that setting, yes, because there's so many other things going on and there's so much stimuli, and so anyway.
Yeah. And like the distraction thing, like coming and playing at this park has been really an eye-opening experience for me, because like I'm not reading music at all, and I have to see what other people are doing, and seeing movement distracts me so much. Like I see things and my eyes go, and then I'm like, what was I doing? And I was like, oh, that was the wrong note. So for the first few weeks, I did all of our shows with my eyes closed so that I wouldn't get distracted by things. Like anytime I knew that there was like a tricky part coming up, or like not tricky, but like somewhere where I really needed to focus, I had my eyes closed, and it was during the line dance. So I'm surprised I didn't fall off the stage or knock into one of my colleagues. But I've also found that wearing earplugs is helpful for me for especially situations like it's super loud also, but it helps me hear myself, and it sort of like dulls everything else around me so that I can focus. I'm also really sensitive to sounds. Like I would spend like we'd have like school events where like where there'd be like screaming and shouting and like all of that stuff, like playing sports and all of that, and I would sit in the principal's office, because I was just so overwhelmed with like all of the sounds going on, and it was just so much. And honestly, I don't understand how nobody diagnosed me with ADHD or any type of thing, because I've had all of these things since I was a kid, but I did well in school, so doesn't raise a flag at all.
It's a little concerning, right? It is possible to have what people, consider as quote unquote disabilities and to still do, because these things maybe make things harder for you, but they don't necessarily stop you from achieving your goals. And especially if you're really passionate and driven, you might be just in a situation where you are just going to make it happen no matter what the cost is. And oftentimes people assume, for better or for worse, that when you are successful at something, that there is nothing holding you back. And in most cases, that couldn't be from the truth. I mean, we all have our own issues and challenges that we go through. And in a lot of cases, the biggest difference is that you've decided it is important enough to you to do whatever it takes to accomplish whatever that goal is, for whatever reason. Maybe you're passionate about that particular craft. Maybe you understand what's at stake, like for example, maybe you really wanted to be on the AB honor roll in high school. And so regardless of what it took, you were going to do what you could to make sure you got to be or higher in all of your classes, as an example. Or maybe you were in college and you were acutely aware of how much money you were spending or your parents were spending and how much loans you had to take out. And you're like, I'm going to make sure that I make the most use that I possibly can of the information that I get here. So I'm going to make sure that I take notes. I'm going to make sure that I do really well, or whatever the case may be. There are many, many, many different reasons as to why someone might be able to do that. But it's also like there's a hidden blessing in there, right? And that is that just because you might struggle with a disability doesn't mean that you can't succeed at whatever task that you want to succeed in. You just have to take a different approach to it. One of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago, I don't even know which episode it will be.
I don't know what day it is anymore, so it's fine.
Yeah, but we talked about a little bit about the treating yourself with care and compassion when you practice, etc. And I mentioned in that episode how I transitioned myself from "don't mess this up, you idiot" to I'm so excited for how great this will sound. And then I also change it in my pedagogy and the way I teach other people, et cetera. And a lot of that has also helped me as a performer, especially as a performer, right? You want to talk about distractions. You go out and the light is shining, you can barely see anyone in front of you, and it's really hot and uncomfortable. And most of us rarely, like I oftentimes wear a dress shirt and a tie when I am on stage, but I don't bring a tie to my practice room, right? Unless I'm specifically trying to get used to that environment, in which case it still doesn't work because it feels nothing like, being on stage. But if I'm focusing on, oh, here comes that section, that's my favorite section. And oh my goodness, yeah, I love how this goes. And oh, wow, my accompanist is doing really great at that. And whatever the case may be, right? If I'm allowing myself to drive my thoughts organically through the positive sections of that experience, then even if it feels like it might have otherwise been a giant train wreck, it ends up being a positive experience because I'm able to continue to focus. My last recital, the last faculty recital I did was a lot of that. A lot of things happened that did not go according to plan. And because I had trained myself to think about specific things in specific areas and allow my mind to wander in those directions as I was playing, I was able to get through the recital. So it was it ended up being a positive experience. But that's one of the things you have to know about yourself. You have to know that this is just a part of who you are, and how do you use it to be for your benefit rather than trying to fight it and suppress it and try to be someone that you're not.
Yeah. No, I love all of that. And I think, sorry, my brain is just like boop boop boop. I
That's
hear.
okay.
Sorry, I got like 4 hours of sleep last night, so
No, that's okay. Apparently, I
you
cheat all of
you
your
got you
hours
got
of
your
sleep.
like full like what 9, 10 hours. I'm jealous.
Yeah, for the first time in like forever.
For the
I
first
knew you were gonna do.
time
The moment I said that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, there it is, there it is."
Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about now. So like brain. My brain works. Someone says a word. I cannot memorize my music for the life of me, but I hear a song with words once and I know all of the words. And so
Yeah,
people will say words and I will burst into that song. And it's just like I love it. I think it's great, but it's just it's just something so random that like I do and I'm just like, why do I, why is this what I'm good at?
yeah,
But also like the thing I wanted to talk about was like hyper fixating on things. People talk about it all the time. They're like, "Oh, picking up a hobby, do it for about a month. There should be some sort of thing online where like you can gift all the equipment that you got for that hobby to like the next person who's hyper fixating on that, and like it's just
yeah,
like a little exchange thing because like video games is a huge problem for me. Like getting into them, I would I binge everything I do. I start to get into it and then I can't stop. And other people they don't they're just like, "Well, stop." And I was like, "But I have to keep going." Like I don't know how to stop
yeah,
myself. I was the same thing with reading when I was growing up. If I started a book, I had to finish it. So I was reading at school, I was reading at lunch, I was reading at the dinner table. My mom would get so mad. I would read like under my covers at bedtime with like my flashlight and she would confiscate my book because I needed to go to sleep to like, be able to function, but I couldn't
yeah,
sleep because I was thinking about how this book was going to end. And I'm like the same thing with like TV shows and Netflix right now, especially Netflix makes it so easy to it's like, oh, I don't want to watch a movie because that's too much commitment, but let me watch 5 episodes straight of this 40-minute show.
yeah,
Like, because that's less of a commitment than a 2-hour movie.
yeah.
And yeah, it's just so interesting, like everything like just jumping from one thing to the next. And I find it so difficult for me to stick with something. I find it difficult to have a plan, like to create a plan. I actually wanted to share a practice plan. Like I love coming up with practice plans
Yeah.
uh, because I need to have a goal. If I don't have a goal, if I don't have something coming up, I'm not going to practice it because why would I do that? Like, why would I prepare myself in advance for challenges that are going to come? I don't know what the challenges are, so I'm not gonna work hard to face these imaginary challenges. Um, but I've been having a lot of trouble figuring out what to practice, especially this summer, because we're doing like 5 shows a day. I do my warm up, I do the shows, and it's like I'm not getting worse at trumpet, but I'm really not improving at all. Like my mental capacity, like for like performing by memory and to interact with the crowd with my eyes open now, like has gotten a lot better. But my technique on trumpet is like, you know, is just chilling. And honestly, some parts like have gotten worse. Like if you were to ask me to play anything like classical, it would not go well right now. So I reached out to one of my friends, Jacoby Henry. I love him. He's my best friend. Because he is so good at coming up with scheduled practice plans. And I told him, I was like, this is what my schedule is like. This is when I would like to practice. These are all, and I had a list of a million things that I wanted to do because I overestimate my ability to do things and then I get overwhelmed. So like I had a list of like, I don't know, like 10 etude books, like maybe like 20 solos, and like I want to get more into improv and stuff. And so I had all of this listed, and I'm gonna share my screen so you can see.
Ooh.
He literally wrote out this is, you find a best friend like this
Yeah.
because this is amazing. Um so he came up with like a mock practice plan for me, and
Mhm.
so the way my schedule works, like I have a show at 11:15, like I have a show starting at 11:15 and then every hour. So 11:15, 12:15, 1:15, and then I have a lunch break, and then 3:15 and 4:15. So it's like I want to be able to like practice in between sometimes, but also like get my playing, get something out of my warm up in the morning that's not just like blah, 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 like random
Yeah.
stuff. So I told him what I wanted to do, and then he gave me suggestions, and he's like, instead of doing everything all at once, you should pick one or two things and focus on that for like a
Uh-huh.
few weeks so that you get. And I'm like, I know that, I know that. I just need to be reminded, and I need somebody to hold me accountable for it because
Absolutely.
I'm not good at doing that. But so he came up with this, and like stretching and breathing. I have to incorporate stretching, especially of my body because I jump around and move around so much, and my body's deteriorating. But like he even gave me like minutes, and I don't do well with like setting specific minutes, but in this case, like when I have to get going to a show, like if I set my timer, I'm like, I'm just gonna do this like Clark exercise for 5 minutes, like keep working on it, or do this scale or two mode or the modes or whatever. So that's super helpful, and like I might modify it just a little bit and like go through it, maybe not have a timer on it, but yeah, this is sort of like what he came up for me, and I was just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So, and then he like added notes. Whoops. Added notes like I've been doing this like this. He's like, pick the hardest thing you're working on, put all the standards you're working on like into a list, and then like rotate through them. So it's just super helpful, like even to like get somebody else to help you stay accountable. I know that for me, body doubling is super effective. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've heard that term before, but body doubling is basically you're doing a task and you get somebody else to just basically sit with you to do that task, and it makes it easier for you to do that task. So like meeting someone at the library to write a paper, or I hear somebody else practicing and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go practice now. Like
Yeah.
that's the perfect like body doubling example for me because I don't feel like practicing, and then I hear somebody else, I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. I think I'm gonna play my instrument today. But
Yep.
yeah, I wanted to share this because I thought that it was first of all super nice to see it laid out like this, and also big shout out to Jacoby because he's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. Fantastic. He deserves a shout out. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And I think there's a lot of reward as well to um, having people you can trust to help you to go through those certain things, right? Because what I find as well is depending on the project, depending on what it is, it becomes a lot easier to plan something out yourself and to do it yourself. And then depending on other projects, it's a lot more helpful to just get somebody else to do it for you. And one of the reasons is that in some cases, well, I'll tell you from personal experience, certain things that I sit down to do. If I sit down and put together the plan, just putting the plan together is going to take all of the focus that I have left for said project. and I'm not working on that project at all for the rest of the day, even if I try. And so then, I need to go back the next day to actually execute the plan. And by the time the next day rolls around, I may have a different idea or opinion about the plan because I was the one who put it down and I'm never staying true to it. But if someone else took the time to put it together for me, I'm a lot more likely to say, I like the way this is put together. I never would have thought of it this way. Let me try this and leave it as is. And as a result, it ends up being a lot more productive. There's not necessarily a criteria for, when it's great to plan yourself versus when it's great to have someone else plan. But for me, I've always found it's been just, when it happens, right? So that's one of the reasons why I relish so much having a team with me to do my stuff from the business side of things. I'm only not going to shout them out because I know they don't want me to. They would be like, don't give me credit. But I have two amazing individuals who you can find on my website. So we'll pseudo shout them out. Who helped
scavenger hunt
on my team. Yes, scavenger hunt. Who helped me on my team to do, and especially things like manage my consortiums and certain smaller one-off projects. Like if I'm updating a certain section of my website, for example, my new store just recently launched, and I needed to basically rebuild it from scratch. And there were certain projects that were just overwhelming for me to sit and do simple projects, but the fact that they were all together and I had to do them all before I could even think about showing it to the public just made me lose my mind every time I sat down. And when I say every time, I mean every time for the past, it was maybe 2 years that I was saying, I have to update this website. I have to do this. Oh, but I have to do this and this and that and that. In order to do this, I need to do that, right? And you look at the one step and you see that there's 12 or 13 aspects that go into getting to that step, let alone actually completing that step. And you just go, okay, cool. This is a project for another day. At least that's how my mind usually works in those situations.
I feel that. I definitely feel that.
Yeah. So even just going to one person and saying, hey, listen, like it would mean the world to me if you could help me do this thing, right? And even if it's one thing and 12 things becomes 11 things, just the fact that something happened without me having to sit and do it myself gives me the motivation. It's like you said, when you have an environment around you, oftentimes it encourages you to do whatever it is that's happening around you. You hear someone practice, oh, time for me to practice, and if you don't hear someone practicing, maybe you don't think about practicing the entire day, which is obviously less the case if you're a music major. You hopefully have music around you. Music is hopefully a major part of your degree. It's the whole point of it. But as a working professional, you might not necessarily have the experience. The only time you play might be at a gig and you go back to an apartment or a house or wherever you are. And you might not hear music unless you're the one making it. And so if you have a situation where there are people around you also making music, it'll encourage you to also make music. That's one of the reasons why, I mean, and we haven't spoken much about this yet, maybe a future topic to talk about, but when we talk about the social media algorithms and how to utilize blah, 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 how to speak English, how to utilize it to help to build your career. I have been very intentional with who I follow and how I follow, and also the specific watch time that I consume on specific projects for the sole purpose of helping me to be inspired to do certain things. Because I know that if I hop onto Instagram and I see Kayla Solomon playing something, it's going to remind me that I can do that too. And that I can totally pick up my trumpet and start playing things as well. I can maybe literally make my own Instagram post with the instrument, or maybe I'm just picking up the instrument to play something specific. Then I can go to, like I was saying, my list of goals that I put down, and I don't put any timeline for them. But it's like, oh, when I sit down, what do I do? Well, here are the things I've laid out that I wanted to do at some other time. When I didn't ask myself what I need to do. And then I take a look at those and I pick one and I do it. But I'm not getting to that. I may or may not get to that if I'm not in an environment where I'm seeing it happen around me. And obviously, sitting in an apartment by myself is usually not an environment for which I hear people play the instrument. But if I hop on social media and somebody sounds amazing on their instrument, on their page doing whatever it is that they're doing, it's going to inspire me to get up and do the same thing.
Yeah. I think like the what I'm most scared about, I've been in school for 9 years, and and I realized this year that I need to have a schedule, and I need it to be set by not myself, because I will find a loophole. I will be like,
Yes.
oh, you don't actually need to do this. You could do this another time. But if it's someone else or something else holding me accountable, everyone's like, you're just working on your dissertation. Why are you taking classes? I'm like, because I need this structure. I need to have it, because otherwise, like the first semester, I didn't take very many classes, and I told myself I was just going to write. I did not write for the first few months. I took lots of naps because, first of all, I knew I had this big project I had to do, and I was overwhelmed by it, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to do it, and so I was overwhelmed. So I would take a nap.
Yeah.
And that's how I cope with things. Like when I'm overwhelmed, I will take a nap. I took lots of naps, and I didn't end up starting my paper for quite a while. So I don't know where I'm going with this. I
this
took
is the
four
perfect
hours.
episode to talk about.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's hi, I'm Kayla. I have
Hi, Kayla.
4 hours of sleep. I It's gonna be like over 100 degrees today, and I'm gonna have to dance outside.
Oh, you'll do great. It'll be great.
I might melt into a puddle.
Nah, you'll be great. You'll be
Oh my goodness, last night, sorry, I'm just like this is
That's
peak
okay.
ADHD.
Do it.
Last
Let's
night
do it.
last night was karaoke night, and with some of the other performers, we were talking about like the heat and how it's hard to perform. We cut a lot of things in our shows just to make it safer for everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, nothing is as bad as being in the butt of the dragon. Nothing. I literally, after 5 minutes, my heart rate was at like 172. I was dripping sweat. I was bent over. My back was hurting. My freaking butt was like having muscle spasms. And so like even having all of this heat, I'm like, nothing's as bad as being in the dragon. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing
Yeah.
compares.
You're like, I'd rather it be hot outside.
I would much rather be hot outside and standing up tall.
It's funny as we're talking. I keep looking over and I'm seeing like we are getting heat advisories right now. And literally just updated as I said it. We're getting heat advisories telling us to stay inside. And I know this is my first season, so I have taught marching band every season since 2010 until this season. This is the first season that I've actually not gone out to work officially with any marching band from an educational standpoint. And I'm not going to lie, it feels pretty weird. It's it's necessary for where I am at this stage of my career, but it feels very unnatural because I've been doing it for so long, and I can't help but think about the heat, you know, the heat advisories that are going out literally right now, and those students, my kids, right, that are all outside. And a good number of them are outside right now, and then the rest of them will start band camp next week. But I really hope the heat goes down.
Yeah.
But then, like you were saying, there's I think this might be an ADHD related thing as well. But certain things that are you can grow accustomed to an environment around you that is well, weather related or situation related, excuse me, in most cases. But in cases where you have to deal with something physical that has to do with your body, like you have to bend over to be in a costume at an event for an extended period of time or whatever the case may be, those tend to be, frankly, intolerable experiences. And it's pretty hard it's like, oh, you only have to do this for, even if it's like 3 minutes, those 3 minutes feel like 3 days. Like, I can't do this. This is the worst thing ever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I think it's interesting as well. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of things that's interesting about this conversation as a whole, but I think it's particularly interesting that it's something that we have to address on such a consistent basis today, because even 10 years ago or so, it wasn't something that we were even thinking about addressing. And it's something we absolutely should have been addressing. 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. But as we continue to progress in the world and certain aspects of the world become different, like, for example, short form content has become king in the world. And on average, people watch about 15 seconds worth of content before they move on to the next piece of content, which has gone up. Actually, it used to be an average of 12 seconds. So our attention spans are getting better, apparently. But relative to the type of thing you used to do as a traditional form of media, right? Like sit down and watch a 2-hour movie at a movie theater, as opposed to sit and watch a 6-second TikTok, right? It trains us very much so to, even if you're not, a diagnosed ADHD human being with ADHD, to just not focus on something for an extended period of time. It's very easy to get bored, to doze off, to get distracted, because it's not really required of us, other than in school, which, let's be honest, a lot of schools, and they're designed to be boring. Like if we're just going to be true and honest with ourselves, we get people to sit in a chair and listen to one person talk for an hour, or for an hour and a half, or for 2 hours, and usually don't entertain any questions or anything. There's usually nothing hands-on. Sometimes there's a PowerPoint that hasn't been changed in 20 years. And it's the same PowerPoint that's been used for that class every year. If you're in college, those classes might be at 8 a.m. and you might see half the class not show up, but you know that you have to show up, because if you don't, you're going to get a bad grade and you have to repeat the same class that was the first time. Yeah, that's exactly. And so it's just like, it's one of those things where we're trained that focusing for an extended period of time is not desirable. And so these are things that perhaps are helpful even to individuals who classify themselves as neurotypical, who don't have any who don't deal with autism, who don't deal with ADHD, who don't deal with any of these other types of things that we have going around. And of course, a lot of us who are adults in 20s, 30s, even 40s and 50s, who were not diagnosed with these conditions as children, and now are realizing that they either have it now or they had it all of their lives, which is the more likely scenario, and are now figuring out how to deal with things. We don't really know how to deal with it, because we're trained, not to focus basically on anything for an extended period of time. I think it's really, I don't know. I think it's really interesting, and hopefully we as a world, or at least as a country, are going to go more towards allowing individuals to have reasons to be engaged and to stay focused on whatever it is that we're asking them to learn and grow and develop with.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. Sorry, slow brain. Slow. But I think what I was trying to make a point of earlier is that I don't know how I'm going to survive this next year without being in school, having to practice, having to have I have a concert coming up, I have a recital coming up, I have this competition coming up. If I don't have to do something, I will likely not do it. And I've just come to accept that, instead of making a list of a ton of things that I have to do and all of the things that I should be doing. It's because if I get too overwhelmed, I won't do any of it.
Yeah.
Which is so hard. But yeah, I don't know. ADHD, man.
Maybe we need to send you out to do some master classes and some local and statewide and national recitals and other things of the sort. Maybe we need to get you out traveling. Maybe we can get you out on my side of the country and to do some things over here.
I would love that. That
would be super fun. Yeah.
That would be really fun. Yeah, I need to just create all of those opportunities, go out and do them. But my brain is
and that's really the biggest difference becoming a professional is, you can still obviously have a schedule, right? That's a thing you can do. But yeah, you're not required, quote unquote, to, you don't have classes to take, right? You don't have, recitals to prepare for every semester. But you absolutely can do those things, right? Like you can make those types of things. Sometimes when I make announcements to people, whether it's, individuals who are in a close friend group or whether it's among my audience, it's for the specific purpose of holding me accountable to do said task. And those are oftentimes really helpful, especially when somebody, anytime I say, well, I'm going to do a performance at this place, there's usually a group of people that are really excited. I'm really grateful and humble that people are excited to hear me play the trumpet. I think it's a profound thing that somebody would take their evening to go sit in a closed space where they can't bring food or water, or, they can't scroll through TikTok, right? Or any of those things. And instead they're going to watch you blow air through a piece of metal for an hour. I think that's profound, and that's super grateful, or that's something I'm super grateful for. And that's something we should never, ever take for granted. But that type of thing, when I think about that, when I think about how someone's making that type of commitment, right? Like they're going to take an entire family, for example, with them and, watch me play trumpet, then it helps me to go, okay, cool. So I want to make sure that this is worth their time. And this is what I'm going to do to make that happen. And then that makes it a lot easier to plan and prepare for, put together a schedule and plan and prepare to continue to progress. And it's not easy because, in addition to the 9 years of, school that you had for college, there's also all of the years, right? 13 for most of us, of grade school that you went through. So like what part of your life didn't include school in it? Before you were 5 or before you were 4, how much do you really remember then? And so the very thing that is one of the most useful things you can do, which is the application of your skills on your own terms, is the very thing you don't learn until you're done with school. So yeah, I mean, it's a transition, but it's possible, obviously, right? Because it has been done, and it has been done by people with ADHD, people, who don't learn the quote unquote typical way. I don't know. I think in 2 years, if not less, the typical way of learning will be the rapid fire, one topic to next topic. ADHD will be the norm, and being neurotypical will be the disorder. But until then, it's we know that it's possible to make these things happen no matter what the challenges are that you go through. And maybe that's the most important thing to kind of hang on to is to understand that the challenges you go through are not strong enough to stop you from achieving whatever it is you want to achieve. But you just might have to get creative with how you go through the process of achieving your goals, and be okay with working with yourself and with your tendencies instead of trying to deny critical aspects of who you are, and trying to do it the way that everyone else might do it. Because if you do that, you're then not being true to yourself, and you're not being authentic to yourself. And ultimately, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. So going through the process of, this is a little bit of the self-love conversation that we had previously, right? Accepting who you are, knowing that, that you are who you are, and knowing how you learn and how you progress, and then embracing a process that is conducive to that growth, which may or may not be like anything that you have learned in school up to this point. If you're a professional out in the world, it may not be like anything you've done for decades as a professional. You might find a really big breakthrough as you go through that process. So, if there's anything we can kind of highlight on, it's that, to accept yourself and who you are. And there's nothing wrong with you, right? But with who you are and the type of things that you like to do, take what you do and use it to your advantage to achieve the goals that you want to achieve.
Don't forget to stay up to date with us on social media. You can find us on YouTube at ChatTPT, and individually on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads at TPT Solo and at MS Grant Music. We love hearing from you and staying connected with our amazing music community. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it valuable, please consider sharing it with your fellow trumpet players and music enthusiasts. Your support helps us grow and reach even more people. Please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It would mean the world to us. Your reviews help others discover our show, and we're always eager to hear your feedback. Thanks for tuning in and being part of the ChatTPT family. We'll be back soon with more inspiring conversations and valuable insights. Until next time, Keep playing those beautiful notes and stay connected.